Hey, I wanted to reach out really quickly and make sure that you were aware of a really good friend of mine, Justin Donald. He's launching a book, and I think the value in it for you is that he has been doing really, really deliberate investing in both businesses, real estate, and all sorts of different vehicles in a way that I don't know anyone else doing. To me, being deliberate in your approach to both business and how you make money and make a living is one of the most powerful things that you can have going on in your life, because it's a lever for so many other things. Justin, in this last year, has put together his lifetime of investment strategies. And when I heard myself say investment strategies right now, and I thought, man, that sounds really boring. But Justin has what he calls the 10 commandments, which are guidelines to simplify investing in a way to cater it to what you're trying to get out of your life. He trademarked the term lifestyle investor, and for really good reason, because he has a set of criteria for him personally that allows him to invest in things that serve the purposes he wants to live the lifestyle he wants. He functionally retired when he was 36, then got a little bored, started a company and grew it to 10 million inside of 18 months with no funding, and then went down this path of saying, hey, I need to make sure that I pass on this set of criteria that I'm using to operate not only businesses, but also investments in this book. So I did an interview with him yesterday. I just wanted to share it with you so you get an opportunity to check it out. Highly encourage you to check out his book, but the interview has some really good nuggets too for any business owner or investor in general. Hope you enjoy it.
Well, Brad, I'm excited to be here with you. This is so fun. In fact, for those of you that don't know Brad, Brad is the co-founder of Easy Pay Direct, and I'll let him do a much better version of telling you what he does and what his business does. But it's one of the top credit card processing companies out there, and Brad and I have known each other for over 20 years. We have been really good friends from way back when we met in Cutco, selling we sold Cutco to pay for college. And this was back in, 97, 98 time frame, 99. And we have been friends ever since. And so, Brad, it's really a privilege and a pleasure to have you on the live stream, and really to, have you supporting the book with me for the big launch week and build up for next week.
I love it, man. I appreciate that. It has been an interesting journey for the last 20 years, for sure.
Without a doubt. Well, before we even get into any of that, I want people to know more about you. Like, give us your background and why, Easy Pay Direct is such an amazing company. Like, please.
Sure. Well, my background is Cutco with you. So I grew up in, for those that don't know, pretty hardcore, I'm going to close you at the kitchen counter or it's not going to happen kind of sales, selling knives, which is interesting. And long story short, I ended up in credit card processing, which was a very deliberate transition. So when we were selling, Cutco does, Vector Marketing is the name of the company. They do this amazing job of building culture. So you have, these kids that just are so excited to be a part of the organization, regardless of how they're performing. And part of that is that they're very contest driven and numbers driven. So I was always pushing to sell as much as I could in a year. But January 1st, you're at zero again, right? So I wanted to be in a position where I had residual income, where I could be location independent, where there was no cap on income, where it was tech focused, and where I'd be working with other business owners. And one of the reasons that last one was important is because as I had sold Cutco for years, when I was getting ready to leave, I thought, okay, well, what do I do with my customer list? And the answer to what do you do with 1,000 or 3,000, in this case, Mrs. Jones, is not very much. So that was an important criteria, and credit card processing met it. Easy Pay Direct was started really to accommodate e-commerce companies that have a higher likelihood of having challenges processing payments. And there's a long answer to this, but basically we built some software that helps protect e-commerce companies or people that run transactions when the card isn't present. And we've been doing that for the last 10 years. So we focus really heavily on the software space, the information product space, from everything from Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi down to Bob that sells a course on how to take pictures with an iPhone. And supplement companies are another big vertical, but we're kind of all over the place there.
Well, that's really exciting. And I know you have some unbelievable clients. And I know a lot of them, and I know you've got some big names, some brand names, some household names. And so I just wanted to at least be able to showcase you and your business. And something else I want to share is your really exciting backdrop here, because what cool parties and celebrations we have had in your place. So Brad recently bought a commercial building in downtown Austin to house his office. And so his office is on the lower level, but on the upper level, there's this really cool entertainment space that, corporately, he could rent this out to groups. But what he ends up doing is he ends up renting his space for like fun parties and hiring a bartender and catering food, and then people just hang out. And in fact, I referenced you in our first live stream, which was with Eric Van Horn, because we met at one of your events that you were hosting with War Room, and then a handful of other people, and we got a chance to connect in that room right behind you, and it blossomed a wonderful friendship between he and I. And so, tell us about some of these fun parties you throw.
That's awesome, man. So just so that nobody knocks on my door, I typically don't rent this space to anybody, maybe some close friends that want to use it, but I do a bunch of events here. And it's because I fundamentally at the core believe that relationships drive everything else in business. And I think that if I track back to any success in my life, I can track back to who was involved in that and how it happened. And so several years ago, I decided that prioritizing ways to deliberately grow relationships was important to me. And one of the things that helps grow those things quickest is unique experiences. And so having an environment that is unusual and unique helps fuel that. Whether it's this space or an adventure trip or an endurance athletic endeavor, those things are all mechanisms for me to build relationships quickly with other people and with myself in some cases.
Yeah, and speaking of adventure trips, you had a really fun mastermind an event that I participated in Fiji. And you had some amazing people join. And one of the relationships that I developed from that event was Mike Koenigs, who is going to be joining for the formal book launch on January 12th. And really was instrumental in me taking and extracting what was in my mind and putting it down on paper and making it fun and making, kind of adding the creativity to it. He just shared so many things with me that put me in a place to really articulate all these things that I had going on in my mind, but I'd never really captured on paper. And so besides that great relationship, there were tons of other great relationships. And we ended up having just one of the coolest experiences. I mean, every day there was a fun, unique experience. One of them, I remember Cloud9, right? Like literally a bar in the middle of the ocean that floats, that, has 2 levels, and it had like a wood fire pizza. It had a bar. You could jump from the top level. I mean, this is crystal clear water. I mean, we're out in the middle of the ocean and you can see, so many feet down. It was unbelievable. Talk about that event and planning that and your whole idea behind it, because that is one of my favorite trips that I've been on, especially from a mastermind standpoint.
Yeah, so good, man. That was so much fun. And Cloud9 is ridiculous. I've also got a little bit of feedback from your speakers, I think. It's kind of what I was saying. It's that I think that life is about relationships. And so the other thing for me is I wanted to make sure that I was deliberately creating these adventures to drive relationships, but it seemed really frivolous in the scheme of building a company and the rest of my life. Every time I was off on an adventure, I felt like I was supposed to be building business. And every time I was building the company, I would get an itch for like, I need to go on an adventure somewhere. And so a couple years ago, I decided that the way I could rationalize this was by going on trips, adventures with people that I could potentially do business with. Now, when I say rationalize, I say that because it's a very loose could potentially do business with. It's really just people that are performing in some area of life that at a high level, which is how, you and Mike ended up there. Was like, hey, how can I find the people that are going to be able to have similar mindsets and connect in a really unique way in a unique place? And so Fiji was one of those, and there are probably 5 other trips slated for the next 3 years when travel's allowed again.
Well, and you're quite the traveler. When I think about like today, you being able to carve out the time, I know you are pressed for time. You've got a bunch of big things going on in your business, a bunch of new hires. You're scaling like crazy. You just got back from Mexico. You're about to leave in a day or 2 days, because we're doing some podcast recording tomorrow. But literally you're like, you've got so many cool trips. I just want to thank you for carving out the time to even be here, because I know this time slot was really tough. So thank you.
Yeah, it was. And I appreciate that. And I think that you've defined the life of a lot of people that are trying to run companies and have fun at the same time. But, honestly, the reason is because of you, right? The reason is because, A, you're a great friend, but B, one of the ways that I describe you is that you are tremendously deliberate about your approach to things. And so I am a huge, which is, by the way, a word that people use to describe me. And when people say that, I'm like, no, but like Justin's at a different level of the deliberate nature that goes into what you do, and also in a very fun and sometimes dorky way, which is great. But I bring it up because, the book that you're launching, it is one of the areas of life where it is most important to be deliberate. It's one of the cornerstones that fuel everything else. And so, I'm a huge proponent of your approach to things, and I wanted to make sure that I made time and move things around to make it happen. So, anything for you, man.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words, and man, we have just had so much fun and so many years of history and experiences and just, bonding moments and wins, victories, but losses where, we got to figure some stuff out and regroup. And it's cool to have a friend that you have known for half of your life. I mean, that's a long time. People, just to have any friends in your life at any time, especially with a year like we had today, that's a blessing. But to be able to have friends like you that have been, constants for that long, is super cool. So I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I appreciate you being here. And I'm excited to learn more about some of the things you have planned, and even some of the areas that you have taken some of the concepts of lifestyle investing to the next level in your life.
Yeah, well, I think that first and foremost, it's an ongoing pursuit for me, right? So it's I'm consistently trying to learn from your approach to things, learn from you, and listen to how you're assessing deals and the criteria that you use. And so one of the things that I really liked about the relationship that came from you and Koenig's was the ability to cleanly articulate a set of rules around that investment. And also, I think in addition to that, it was not just the ability to do it, but seeing how impressed Koenig's was with it, hearing him see that and be like, oh my God, Justin's got this thing that we have to share with people, which is awesome. He's such a goofy dude. And also, not easily impressed because he sees a lot of stuff and he's been around a long time. So very, very cool to see that. For me, I think, one of the things that has been really valuable, Easy Pay Direct is about risk management. So what we're looking at is how do we protect businesses online? And there's a lot in the back end that goes on relative to risk, but much of my life is risk management. And so one of the things that a couple of the criteria that have been valuable takeaways from you are, can you get out of the deal? Is the deal in a finite period of time that isn't going to get in the way of other investments or other parts of your life? And is it going to produce cash flow over time? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that those are the foundational things that I like to think about. Historically, neither of those things have been super high on the list, despite kind of being risk focused.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting when you actually assess and analyze why you do what you do, right? Until you're intentional or deliberate, as you said, about kind of dissecting your own world. It's like, why do you make the decisions you make? Well, there's some framework that you're working off of.
Yeah.
It could be your own. It's likely not if you haven't put intentionality into it. So what likely is happening is you have a framework and beliefs that are built around something that you took away from someone else. Possibly your parents, possibly a mentor, a role model, possibly a peer group. I mean, it's whoever had the most influence or has the most influence. That's probably who you're emulating. It's probably who you're taking their framework and view on life from. And we've got to be careful that aligns with us. If we just go through life on autopilot and we do what someone else thought was good, that may not be a good match or a good fit for us. And so I really think it's important to be deliberate and to spell out what it is that you want, to actually carve out the time and the space to think and not just react, to not just be, let me respond to this text. Let me respond to this email. Let me go ahead and, I've got free time here. So let me listen to this podcast, but to actually get some technology free time where you break away from the distractions that we're inundated with and actually carve out a space to think, plan, design, capture moments, and really just architect what it is that you want to build in your life.
Yeah, man, I think that we have a mutual friend, Hal, very good friend, who is most well known for the Miracle Morning book. And for many, many, many years, I have woken up in the morning and carved out time to read, write, and reflect. And exercise, I've gotten the habit of many, many, many years ago. But the others are that space, right? They are that space to make sure that I am at least stopping and thinking, what am I doing? What have I been doing? And why have I been doing it? And the challenge, I think, is that even when you carve out that space, when you're confronted with a new problem or a new opportunity, which is what many investment opportunities are, you are not, everything seems different. And so you can think about, hey, I've got this sense of what am I after in life, but to map that on can be hard. And it's kind of like when I was in school, I would get these, learning algebra or calculus or every level of math. They'd give you a problem and you do that. The problem would be like the same structure and you do 100 of them. And then you'd get to the test and it would be the same structure with a little tweak. And you'd be like, that's not the same problem. It's different, and you'd have to apply knowledge to, or, intellect to it. And I think that one of the things that's so challenging about assessing a business opportunity or an investment vehicle is that there are all these variables that are in there. So yeah, I'm in total agreement that carving out the time to think about the value set is like mission critical, but the value that you add to things is a framework so that when you get into something, you're not left on your own thinking through all of the nuances, right? You have a value set that's been put together. It's like, does it check this box, this box, this box? And by the way, that's my value that I get out of it, not a totally shameless plug for the book. It's the value that I get from the relationship with you. Is like, okay, he's thought through all this stuff for me and I trust him. right? And that's a helpful thing for me as a friend.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. And I think it's important. So, I mean, otherwise you're going to be overwhelmed with data or overwhelmed with questions, right? And so let's make a checklist and let's make it binary. It's yes or no. Like, does it check the box? Does it not check the box? It's either a yes or it's a no. And what if something only matches up with one of my 10 commandments? Well, that's really easy to rule out. What if something's 10 of 10? Well, that's probably a good one to rule in. And why don't I run that by other people who are really smart as well and see if they see anything that I don't see? And what if I have a bunch of people that all are in agreement that that's a good deal? Well, I can feel comfortable going into that. But then you get into like, well, what if it's a 9 out of 10? What if it's 8 out of 10? What out of 7 out of 10? So it's, and then it's deciding like what's most important right now. What is the commandment that's lacking on this one? And can we get to a point that all the investments are 10 out of 10s? How do you get that much deal flow, or a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 where, it's very protected. The odds are really good that it's going to go well. But in a worst case scenario, you don't lose everything. You just lose something. But what's most likely going to happen is it's going to return a good return. And so I think when you can start leaning to having investments like that kind of give you a little bit more edge, that's where it gets fun. That's where you can kind of take some steps forward in life, or at least in your investment life.
Yeah, I tend to live by this idea of two things. One, I tend to live by this idea of I want to plan for the worst. I also want to plan for the best, and recognize that neither are very likely to happen, right? And I think that that's one really important thing. The other rule set that I have, or the other rule that I have as a part of the set, is I want to know going into something how I'm going to behave. I want to make the decision ahead of time when something bad happens or when something intersects with my plan. And part of that is, like you just mentioned, running a deal by other people. I have different reasons going into those conversations. If the reason is I want to learn more about the deal or get their perspective on it, there's a space for just conversation, communication, and learning. But I had a situation this morning where I thought about running something by people, and I thought, to your credit, I thought, well, wait, why would I run that by them? And if they like or don't like it, how is that going to guide my behavior? And I recognized that the only reason I was doing it was for some sort of emotional validation. It wasn't because I actually needed their opinion to weigh in on the decision. It was because I was insecure about the decision I was making. And I think that that's a really valuable point going into it, to say, okay, well, don't do it for that reason, right?
That's powerful. That's really big to recognize. Like, why am I needing this? Why am I needing the approval? Like, do I need their expertise, or am I looking for approval? Do I just want them to know that I got this cool deal and that, I get this type of deal flow? Or, and not to say that that's what it is for you, but I get this a lot from other people, where it's like, check out what I've got access to. And it's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, I want, and I talked about this earlier today on another podcast that I was on, where one of the most important things in my world is, who am I surrounded with? And this goes with like peer group, this goes to mentors, and then this goes to advisors. Who are the people that I have interviewed, that I have set up to be the movers and shakers and brains? I do not want to be the smartest person. I want to be a smart person. I want to be smart enough to recognize that I'm not the smartest person. And I want to be smart enough to recognize who is way smarter than I am in whatever specialties they have, and assemble them so that I can make less stupid decisions. Right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm setting myself up for success, and I'm doing it through other people that are going to catch my mistakes. And this is in a lot of facets, right, Brad? Like, there are a lot of places where we can mess up. So to me, I've got to have a real good legal advisor. I've got to have a really good tax advisor. I need to have a really good CPA, which is different to me than a tax advisor. I need to have a really good investment advisor or counsel. I need to have a really good estate planning advisor. And the list goes on. I mean, I need people that can help underwrite deals to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So if you look at all the layers, there's just so many of them. And one of the things that I love about having my mastermind, the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind, is you have so many smart people that are part of this, and they are getting really good. So some of them, they've already been proficient investors. And then others of them are like new investors that have just learned so much. And so now they're like, head of class dissecting deals. And it's cool to see what the power, the firepower that so many minds can have.
How are you assess those advisors? How do you pick who is qualified to be that person?
Well, I can tell you how I used to do it first, which is, hey, you seem like a good person. Let me hire you. That was it. Yeah. In the beginning, that's it. I need someone to do my taxes. You'll do,
Sounds like a good criteria.
Right. And then later on, once I noticed that I wasn't getting probably the tax treatment that some of my friends were having, what I noticed was that I need to find someone that's not just I need someone that's proactive, right? I need someone that's not going to just get a tax return done. Well, then it got to the point where it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to hire someone, why don't I interview a bunch of people? And this interview process started with, I'd pick at least 3 people. Well, now I've, interviewed so many people over the years. I mean, we're well into the double digits, for sure triple digits if you look at all the advisors. And, I've really just been able to weed people out pretty quickly and find people that have expertise. And a lot of that is just trial and error. It's using people that are good, using people that aren't good, asking a series of questions, kind of building a framework and a criteria to see how hardworking these people are, what their level of experience is, how responsive they are. Like, do I get access to their cell phone? Can I have like emergency contact if I need it? Because in what I do, I may need it. So these are all considerations.
Yeah, that's helpful. I asked because you brought up a really good analogy, which is interviewing, and it's not even really an analogy, it's literally what you're doing, right? But it's something that I struggle with, or I have struggled with and struggle a lot less with over time inside of my company, right? Interviewing, training, hiring are all separate skill sets that you need to learn over time as a business person, but they definitely overlap.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think no matter what, that's a great place for, people to at least be paying attention to and say, hey, have I been deliberate here in assembling a great team, or have I been settling for whatever I get? And if you've been settling, great. Now you can upgrade, and if you've been upgrading, good for you. Have you upgraded as well as you can? And I used to be real frugal with that, where it's like, scarcity mindset. I want to spend as little as I can, but that situation could have really hurt me. It didn't, but it played out in a way where I got lucky that it didn't. But later on in my life, in my professional life, I made some decisions to spend a lot more money for a much better team. And then when push came to shove in a, stickier situation, I had really solid contracts and legal counsel, and it was ironclad. And so that extra money was the best money I ever spent. It was the best return I ever got from a business standpoint. If you look, I put this in my book, in the 10th commandment, which is, it's kind of fun. It's basically earning a return on every dollar that you spend. So even if you're not investing and earning a return on an investment, but you're spending it or investing into financial or legal or tax advisors, that's still an investment. It's an investment in your education, but it's an investment in, their performance. And so that return is probably the greatest return I've ever had. And then if you take that, one single conversation that I had and the impact that had on transforming one of my investments, it went from what could have been a dud investment to being probably my single greatest investment.
Yeah. And I think that for me, like what I get from that is that's hard when you are, especially when you're starting, to have when you live in sort of a scarcity mentality because money is scarce to you when you're beginning of your financial life. It's hard to deliberately pay somebody more for what you view to be the same service in that moment, right? And I think that what helps me think through that is what you referenced one of your commandments, right? It's a rule, it's a value that you hold that makes that choice easier, which is maybe I get the same service in the moment, but I might get access at a different level, or this will help me elevate the game in a different way later, and you're paying for the future, right? You're investing in the future as opposed to, paying to get this task done right now. And it's relationships again.
Yeah. And what happens when you are investing in the highest caliber team and whatever their area of expertise is, and you learn everything along the way? So I always tell people, I'm hiring you not to get the work done. I could hire anyone to get the work done. I'm hiring you to teach me why you're doing the work that you're getting done. And then I know that for the next time, and I might not even need their services for the whole session of what they do. I might just need them for the bare end to tie up any, loose ends, or to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So maybe I'm using them for 1/10 of the time that I used them before, because my education has grown and I can do so much of it on my own. So yeah, I think that that's huge. And to your point, I remember, so the first time I remember, like when I first started spending money from a legal standpoint, and I was like, yikes, this is a lot. I can't do this. Like, I got to use attorneys as little as possible. But what I realized is, no, that's the wrong mindset. If you use them correctly, they can be the greatest investment. And I remember the first time that I made my first big investment, and at this time, this was a lot of money. I paid $15,000 to draw up contracts for a business that made $0. And I was like, what if this business doesn't ever do anything? I just wasted $15,000, which is a lot of money. And luckily that business ended up doing a lot. But I was set up from the beginning.
Yeah. How do you draw the line of what you want to know personally and what you want to lean on somebody for, right? Like, you don't want to be an attorney yourself, presumably. But, you just mentioned I'm hiring you to teach me, not just to do it for me. So in the case of, let's say, taxes, there's a huge space and people operate in both sides. I know people that are like, no, hire somebody else, do all that stuff for me. I'm not comfortable with that. Even if I think that they're amazing, I want to learn a certain portion so that I'm comfortable enough to make my own decision. Where's the line for you? The line clearly with understanding an investment is you want to understand the investment. But where is it for, building wealth and taxes and other things? Do you have a criteria for that, or how do you do that?
Well, I think for anyone, there should be at least some foundational education to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. I really think it's good to be able to explain in layman's terms, or as close to layman's terms, the things that you do, the strategies that you use, because if you can do that, then you understand it. I don't have to understand everything that my CPA does, that my tax strategist does. I don't have to understand it all. I don't have to be able to articulate it all, but I at least have to understand at a foundational level, and maybe hopefully even beyond a foundational level, what it is that they're doing. Because if I understand that, and if that is part of my education, it will influence decisions I make. It will influence investments that I make. It will influence so much. And so I think that is just massive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. I found myself this year going through different analysis of investment vehicles, some of which we've talked about, and being in a position where I thought, you know what, kind of what you just said, which is I couldn't explain this to somebody else really simply. This seems too complicated. Until I get a grip on it, I'm not moving forward. Despite the fact that I have several friends that are using a similar vehicle. And I just thought, that to me, what the criteria isn't is that, well, I know smart people that are doing it, so it must be the thing to do. That's not a good criteria for me, because I don't know how they came to their decisions.
That's right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I want it to make sense. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that people pay for that they don't know that they're paying for and they don't need. So I want to make sure that I'm, being a good steward of my money, getting a good return on it. But like, I need to make decisions for me, not based on other people. I'm happy to take other people's recommendations, but what works for them isn't necessarily going to work for me. It often works just fine, but that's because I deliberately made that decision by doing some investigation. So, what would be fun, Brad? I'd love to even just change topics here real quick, because last year was a weird year in many different ways. We're in a new year, and I would imagine that you're of the mindset it's going to be an even better year, a more exciting year. I'm curious what you're most excited about in 2021.
That's a good question. I think that I'm probably, it's a boring answer for most people, because what I'm actually most excited about is building more structure inside of our company, inside of EasyPay Direct. And we're like, we had a couple big years, and with the structure that's going into place, it will be not only a facilitator for large growth, but just more fun. Decision making and management, etc., is so much easier when you have a good structure in place. So one of my favorite mental narratives is that freedom comes within discipline. So if you have structure, framework, and discipline, that's what allows you to feel free. You're not trying to make the decision at every step along the way. You're just kind of following a path. So that's one of the things that I'm very excited about. And, I would say some crazy travel trip, but honestly, until we know what's going on with travel, et cetera, who knows? But there's a trip to Norway in the book somewhere with Northern Lights and driving cars on ice tracks and all sorts of fun stuff too.
Now that sounds cool. I remember as a kid when I would go to the go-kart slick track. I mean, What a fun time in Wisconsin Dells. I don't know if there are many people watching this that have been there. What a cool place. It's interesting. You talk about creating some disciplines in your business and creating, just having that intentionality, because you are very much that way in your life, right? You have a structure, you have a routine, you have set yourself up for success. And at a very high level, you've done that. You've done that as a professional. You've done that as, just the things that you have important in your personal life, like your physical health. And for a lot of you that don't know this, Brad is an extreme athlete. He's been able to do things that most people would dream of being able to do, and is just, really kind of at a whole nother level, which is cool. I think your mental discipline is just some of the finest of anyone that I know. And so I'm curious to see how you're going to replicate that, because you have it, you live it. This is what you do, but it's tough to transition this. This is like what I talked about at the beginning, where it's hard to take what you do, what you know so well, and put it down on paper, like my 10 commandments. Same thing. You've got all these things in your life that have created a lot of success, but how do you translate that into your business for the next phase of growth? Because typically you grow, you plateau, and then you got to figure out how to get the next growth, and then you plateau, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me personally, and this will be very true for some people and not at all for others, but for me personally, it is letting go of some ego and listening to people and learning from people that have already done things, and being vulnerable. And I those are overlapping. In the Venn diagram there's a big chunk in the middle that overlaps, which is vulnerability. But that's the path for me, is that I need to know when to ask for help, and then commit to it. And I think some of it too is also narrowing in on focus. So I want to do all the things, right, all the time. And the fact of the matter is, you can do all the things, but you can't do them all at the same time. It's one thing at a time, setting the rules, following through, because you have to block out the other stuff if you want to get really good at one thing.
That's right.
So that's going to be the story of 2021 is saying no and having dedicated periods of time to focus on one thing at a time.
I love it. That's awesome. And you're like me. I want to say yes to everything. You know, a lot of people are built. I've said this before. A lot of people are built where they have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And I have shared this with a few people that my wife has JOMO, the joy of missing out. And so it's just an interesting way of looking at life. And it's a nice counterbalance because I want to do everything and she's very selective on what we do. And so it really is good because it slows me down. It probably speeds her up. And then we meet somewhere in the middle. And it's probably more, to her where we meet than it is to me. But it's just another interesting perspective. Like, how can you get at peace and have comfort with missing out? Like, having things that sound exciting that you want to do, but actually being okay missing out on them for other things that you can prioritize to be more valuable.
Yeah. Well, I know that about you too. It's very funny because you're one of the few good friends in town that's married that also is out all the time. And it's not like let me see. Nope. If I go out this night, I can't go out this night. It's just, you've got a very fun, active, interesting life. And it's probably a result of that balance, which is awesome.
Yeah. And we've also figured out that sometimes it's good for me to go do my own thing and not have her come along because that may drain her energy, but it might fill me up. So there's a lot of things we do together. And then there are some things that I do on my own, some things that she does on her own. And then, really finding that, happy medium. And I think that's true for anyone in any relationship, whether that's a relationship with you and a significant other, a spouse, or whether it's you and your relationship with work or even with the people that you work with. So, on a lot of different levels, getting, clear on what that looks like. So, Brad, I'm curious, is there anything else that you want to discuss with our time here leading up? Because basically this is our third live stream. We had Eric Van Horn on Monday. We had Ryan Levesque yesterday. We've got you today. We've got Darius Mirshahzadeh tomorrow. And tomorrow will be at an earlier time at 1:15 Central Standard Time. And then we will, we've got one on Friday, we've got one on Monday, and I'll get into more of the specifics of that. But with the time that we have left, is there anything that you want to really get into?
I've asked you some questions that I wanted answers to. I think that, I guess another is, and I know my answer to this, but you assess a really wide variety of types of deals. Are there genres of deals that you don't want to get involved in, or does it excite you to go into a different industry or vertical? How do you make choices about that? Because you're looking at, 1,000 different types of businesses or investment vehicles. Does it matter to you where they are, or what they are?
Yeah, it does matter. And real quick, before I do that, I made a mistake. I almost forgot about our dear friend Hal because I was one day ahead in my mind in the schedule. Tomorrow is actually Hal Elrod. So tomorrow at 3:00 is Hal. Friday is Darius Mirshahzadeh at 1:15. And then Monday is Jamie Hope. And then we have the launch party on Tuesday. So I just wanted to clear that up. Launch party is going to be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. But so to answer your question, Brad, great question. Sometimes I want to learn about a new industry and I want to understand it better. And I can understand it better when I do a deep dive. I have some money exposed in it. So maybe I don't put a lot in, but I put enough in that it keeps me paying attention. But there's a lot that I think there's an order for. So to me, I want to make sure I have cash flow that covers my lifestyle. First of all, it's got to cover my expenses, my bare minimum expenses to survive. And then after I get there, I want to cover my lifestyle. And I want this to be in assets. I want it to be in assets that produce income because the asset should appreciate, but they're at least going to hold value. You know, if you do good due diligence, you buy them in a good market, they're at least going to hold value, at a worst case, probably increase. All right. So that to me is kind of like the foundation. And then if you want to kind of diversify from there, I think it makes sense. But to me, there's a time and a place for everything. So it's not like I'm against the stock market. I would say I'm against all of my money in the stock market. You know, that seems a little much. And that's what most people do, because then all your eggs are in one basket. So I actually like stock market investing, and I like it for the long haul, and I like it for a small portion of my portfolio. And as long as I'm not, day trading with it, because, we're creatures of emotion. Like, an algorithm's going to beat me as a day trader as good. The best day traders are going to get beat by the algorithms, right? So you're at a disadvantage right out of the gates. So to me, that's not a good use of my time. So if I'm going to invest in the stock market, I want it to be long-term. I want it to be a portion. I don't want it to be all, and I want to do it cheaply. I want to do it in an index fund, so it's the least cost. But to me, I don't want that to be the first place, because that money is held captive, right? I'm not able to really live on the cash flow that produces. And I would much rather live on the cash flow, and it's volatile. Public equities are, very volatile. I'd rather be in an asset that produces cash flow first, so that I can get utility out of that money today and not have to wait until I retire. You could look at, seed investing, or the very first investment in a startup, which is a highly risky and speculative investment. Well, I don't think that's a good place to start, but most of the people I run into, they invest first in the stock market. They've got all their money, or almost all their money, in the stock market. And then the next move they make is they invest in these high risk startup companies that have no proven model. And the odds are really good that it's not going to work out, because most of them don't work out. And so people lose their money there. So I like that type of investing once cash flow from your assets that goes above and beyond what it costs you to live is funding it. So I think there's a time and a place for tech startup. That's not my go-to. I would be careful how much I put in it, but I do want to have an allocation of my portfolio in it, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. And we could go across the board with everything. I love debt investments, especially senior secured debt, where my investment is backed by some other asset or some collateral worth more than the loan that I make or the investment that I make. I like investing in operating companies, but it's all based on the structure, how quickly I can get a return on my invested capital, what the cash flow on that looks like, how long of a payout that's probably going to be. So all of these things matter to me. So you could look at one company and say, that's a great investment, and this one's not a great investment. It could be in the same industry. It could be in the same exact space identically, but the terms are structured differently. So there's so much there. And to me, I just want to have a base of cash flow where I get the utility today. And then if I want to increase my lifestyle, I could just increase the cash flow that I earn. Or if I want to increase the investments, I could increase my overage, my surplus above what it costs me to live, to go in and fund all these different things. So I like to start in a place where I can be confident that I'm buying a good, solid asset in a really strong market that is, recession proof, like affordable housing or something like that. And then from there, keep building that cash flow, and then diversify my portfolio into other things that produce cash flow. That's kind of my philosophy and my take on it all. And then I also don't like as long of term plays. Like, a lot of people invest in stuff where they're not going to see a return on their money for 10 years. You don't know if it was a good investment or not for 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 15 years. That's a very small portion of my portfolio, and it's all funded from cash flow.
Yeah, that was like your whole life's investing philosophy in 7 minutes.
Right? Yeah, we really got into it.
Well, but what I got from that was, the only time that you're not afraid to get into an area that you're not familiar with, but you only do it if you want to be interested in it, and you're okay having some, what you said was exposure, and meaning that you're okay with that money going away It's not going to be that much that it'll really upset you, but you want to play in the space by putting some money in to get to understand that specific area better.
Yeah, and to take it one step further, I would rather that investment be made with cash flow that is above and beyond what I need to live than principal that I could be earning cash flow on if I'm not where I need to be to cover my expenses. So in other words, if that investment goes bad, I only lost that 1 month of cash flow of that particular amount. I'm not losing what could have cash flowed my lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that. I think that when you're brand new at investing, one of the things that's challenging about assessing deals is the language that gets used. And sometimes it's acronyms, sometimes it's just like the vernacular, just the words that get used. And if you don't associate a meaning to it immediately, you can get lost in the conversation because you didn't know a word or two or three, and just whoosh, it's all gone. And I think that so even I know for me, before I was more active, even the idea of like, don't use your principal for risky investments was like, I had to think through what that meant. And I like the idea of wait until that principal is making money, and then the money that it's making, you can use that for risky investments, the cash flow. But yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that that's great. And you bring up a really good point. What does everything mean? ROI, IRR, MOIC, ARR, MRR. I mean, we could go on and on and on with acronyms, SaaS. I mean, it's a world of acronyms. And so learning that language is important, and being willing to stop people and be like, all right, real quick, what was that? Remind me that acronym. I think that's all right. I mean, it's better to be a learner than to, learn the lesson the hard way.
For sure. Well, I also, for me, I asked the question because I said, I know how I handle things. And the decision that I've come to is I'm not, you spend your life assessing deals and investing at this point. And I spend most of my life running a company very actively at the moment. And I don't want to learn every new vertical and every new industry and every new possible deal structure. So my choice is for the investment vehicles that I want to be a part of. I want to operate within a specific box. And actually, I know that when you started, it was mobile home parks.
That's right.
And so you said, hey, I've figured out mobile home parks. I'm going to get another mobile home park. And then I'm going to get another one. Right. And understanding that one vehicle allowed you to get very good at the nuances of that one vehicle, so you could just replicate it. And I think as a strategy, that's for me, that's my starting point.
Yeah. And for the sake of, if I never wanted to learn and grow beyond, a certain area, like that strategy could have been fine. I mean, we have a couple mutual friends that's all they do, and they do really well with it. And I think that's great. And for me, I just, I needed to learn the next thing. And then once I mastered that, I needed to learn the next thing. And that's just how I'm wired. Like, I'm a lifelong learner. And so whenever I feel like I have maybe developed enough expertise in some area, then I want to move on to the next one so I can keep challenging myself and learning and growing. So rather than creating, this monster portfolio of this one thing, I'd actually rather create, for me, just knowledge and understanding in a lot of areas, and do many things well.
Yeah, I think that in those, going back to kind of the beginning of the conversation, that's where it's so important to back out and think about what you're trying to accomplish when you're investing in something. Is it just a shiny object that somebody is excited about, that your friends are excited about? Or do you just feel like you're supposed to be making a better return? Or is it that you want cash flow out of it to enhance your lifestyle? I think that's a really important thing to look at.
Yeah, and where do you go to learn all this stuff? That this is another thing. It's like you really have to be intentional about learning and who you're going to trust with that content, and then get alignment with what you want to do. So like if someone wants just a lot of exposure in the stock market. I'm not their guy, like that's not what I do. Like I would, there are plenty of people that specialize in that. One of our mutual friends, Thomas, actually just reached out to me and he's like, I love what you're building. I love the brand. Like what you're speaking is my language. And I don't have a desire to have exposure to the stock market because I think it's overvalued. And I really want to kind of emulate a lot of what you do. Like, how can I do this? How can I learn this? And, it was really cool. He was so hungry, so eager. So he actually ended up buying the online course, which, I thought was super cool. And he's like diving into that thing hardcore. And so I'm thrilled for, him and his opportunity. And man, does that guy ever have some cool stuff in his world going on?
Oh, he's of deliberate people. He's one that you should spend more time with. He is super, super curious and interesting and deliberate in his approach to everything. To the point where you can have a very in-depth, interesting conversation about almost anything because he spent time thinking about it.
That's cool. Well, we got a call set up, so I'm looking forward to digging in more with him. He's got some unique opportunities that I think with the right foundation and with the right mindset and checklist could be game changer status for him.
No, that's awesome.
So very cool. Well, hey, Brad, thanks so much for spending some time today. Again, I know you're super busy and we went back and forth on times quite a bit. And I know originally this time didn't even work. So I appreciate you moving your calendar and clearing some time to join. I wish you well on your travels. And to everyone who's watching and hanging out, I'm really excited about number one, Brad and what he's building. Number two, the Lifestyle Investor book. And the launch. So you can check out more details at justindonald.com. You can go to /free book as well. And also all the proceeds from the book sales are going to charity. And so, there are a bunch that I'm excited to support. In fact, on our launch day, we've got Love Justice International. It's going to be coming on, and they're going to be the recipient of the first wave of proceeds. So, and it's an organization that combats human trafficking all around the world. So I'm thrilled about that, thrilled about their mission and their vision and being a partner with them. And I'm just thrilled about the education that can come from the book. And for anyone that wants to take, steps beyond the book, I did record, by the way, an Audible that will come out soon. So there is an audio book coming, which should be up in the next, 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. But Brad, thanks so much. I'll see everyone else tomorrow at 3:00 with Hal Elrod, and have a great day.
Thank you, man.